I always thought Clara was the kind of woman who could light up a room without even trying. She had this laugh sharp, like wind chimes caught in a storm, and eyes that seemed to hold secrets I'd never quite unravel. We'd been married for 9 years, built a life in a quiet suburban house with ivy creeping up the brick, and I'd spent most of those years believing she was mine in every way that mattered. My name's Daniel, and I'm a structural engineer. Steady hands, steady mind, steady life. Clara worked as a freelance illustrator, her sketches filling our home with whimsical shapes and colors. We were comfortable, predictable, happy, or so I thought. It started with the phone calls. Late at night, she'd slip out of bed, her bare feet padding across the hardwood, and I'd hear her voice, low and muffled, through the walls. "Just a client," she'd say when I asked, brushing her auburn hair behind her ear with that half-smile I used to adore. I didn't push. Trust was the foundation of US, wasn't it? But then there were the weekends she'd vanish, art retreats, she called them, leaving me with the dog and a fridge full of leftovers. I'd nod, kiss her goodbye, and watch her drive off in our silver hatchback, her silhouette shrinking in the rearview mirror. The first crack came on a Tuesday. I'd come home early, a rare break from a bridge project, and found her sketchbook open on the kitchen table. Clara was meticulous about her art, always tucking it away, but there it was, pages splayed like a confession. The drawings weren't her usual florals or fantastical creatures. They were of a man, tall, broad-shouldered, with a jawline sharp enough to cut glass. His eyes stared out from the paper, dark and piercing, and in one sketch he was shirtless, lounging on a bed I didn't recognize. My stomach twisted. I told myself it was imagination, an artist's muse, nothing more. But the details, the freckle on his collarbone, the scar above his eyebrow, felt too real, too studied. I didn't confront her. Not then. I closed the book, set it back exactly as I'd found it, and waited. That night, she came home humming, her cheeks flushed, and kissed me like nothing had changed. I kissed her back, tasting something unfamiliar on her lips. Cinnamon, maybe, or cloves. It wasn't her usual mint. I lay awake beside her, listening to her breathe, wondering how long I'd been blind. The next day, I started paying attention. The way she'd linger over her phone, the way her laughter sounded different, sharper, almost performative. I wasn't ready to admit it, but the truth was clawing its way up my throat. Clara was drifting, and I was losing her to someone I didn't even know yet. I'm not a paranoid man. I build things, bridges, frameworks, solutions. My world is concrete, measurable, reliable. But Clara's world was smoke and mirrors, and I was starting to see the cracks in mine. After the sketchbook, I couldn't unsee the signs. Her retreats stretched longer, 2 days became 4, then a week. She'd return with paint-splattered jeans and stories about plein-air sessions. But her hands were too clean, her nails too perfect. I'd ask about her work, and she'd wave me off, saying, "Oh, it's just boring commissions, Danny. You wouldn't care." Cared. I cared too much. I started digging. Not proud of it, but I did. Her phone was locked now, new since when? But her laptop wasn't. One night while she showered, I opened it. The browser history was wiped, but her email wasn't. Buried in a folder labeled Invoices, I found a thread with someone named Jasper. No last name, just Jasper. The messages were short, casual, too casual. "Missed you at the studio," one said. "Can't wait for next time," another. My pulse hammered in my ears. There was an attachment, a photo. I clicked it, and there he was. The man from the sketches, leaning against a brick wall, smirking at the camera. Real. Alive. Not some figment of her imagination. I scrolled further. Dates lined up with her trips. Locations, hotels, cabins, a loft downtown. My chest tightened as I pieced it together. Jasper wasn't a client or a colleague. He was something else, something intimate. I closed the laptop, my hands shaking, and sat there in the dark, listening to the water shut off. When she emerged, towel-wrapped and humming, I forced a smile. "Good shower?" I asked. She nodded, oblivious, and climbed into bed. I didn't sleep. The next day, I followed her. She said she was meeting a gallery owner downtown, but I called in sick and trailed her instead. She didn't go to the gallery. She parked outside a sleek building, glass and steel, the kind of place I'd never design, and disappeared inside. I waited, parked across the street, until she came out 2 hours later. He was with her. Jasper. Taller than me, younger, with that easy swagger I'd never had. They didn't touch, but the way she looked at him, head tilted, eyes bright, told me everything. My wife was gone, and I'd been too slow to see it. I didn't confront her right away. Anger simmered, but I'm a planner. I needed proof, a strategy, something solid to hold on to. I bought a small camera, the kind you hide in a smoke detector, and set it up in our living room. Paranoid? Maybe. Justified? Absolutely. Clara didn't suspect a thing. She'd flutter around the house, sketching, cooking, playing the part of the wife I thought I knew. But the footage told a different story. Late at night, when I was asleep, she'd sit on the couch, phone in hand, giggling at messages I couldn't see. Once, she whispered his name, Jasper, soft as a prayer. I tracked him down. Jasper Hale, 32, a photographer with a loft studio downtown. His Instagram was public, artsy shots of cityscapes, moody portraits, and there, buried in the grid, a photo of Clara. She was laughing, mid-twirl, her hair catching the light. The caption, Muse. My blood boiled. I cross-referenced dates, locations. Every retreat matched his posts. Same cities, same weekends. They weren't careful enough. Or maybe they didn't care. I started testing her. How's the gallery stuff going? I'd ask, casual as anything. She'd shrug. Fine, just busy. Lies rolled off her tongue like honey. I'd mention a weekend trip for us, and she'd hesitate, citing deadlines. I knew the truth. She was saving her time for him. The betrayal wasn't just physical. It was the intimacy. The way she'd carved out a secret life and left me in the shell of ours. I'd watch her sleep, wondering how she could lie so easily, how she could still kiss me with that mouth. One night I snapped. She was out. Another late meeting, and I tore through her things. In a drawer, beneath her sweaters, I found a necklace I'd never seen. Gold, delicate, with a tiny J pendant. Not from me. My hands shook as I held it, the weight of her deception sinking in. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I put it back, closed the drawer, and sat in the dark, plotting. She'd taken something from me, my trust, my peace, and I'd take something back. Something bigger. I stopped pretending everything was fine. Clara didn't notice or didn't care. She'd flutter in and out, all smiles and excuses, while I built my case. The camera caught more, her packing a bag, whispering into her phone, even a moment where she tried on that necklace, admiring herself in the mirror. Each clip was a shard of glass in my chest, but I kept collecting them. I needed evidence not just for me, but for what came next. Revenge wasn't enough. It had to be precise, devastating. A collapse she'd never see coming. I hired a private investigator. Expensive, but worth it. His name was Mitch, a gruff guy with a smoker's rasp and a knack for disappearing into shadows. I gave him Jasper's name, Clara's habits, everything I'd pieced together. Follow them, I said. I want details. Mitch didn't ask why. He just nodded and got to work. A week later, he handed me a folder, photos, timestamps, receipts. Clara and Jasper at a cafe, her hand on his arm. Them slipping into his loft, curtains drawn. A hotel receipt from a town 3 hours away, charged to her card, our card. The photos were the worst. Her leaning into him, laughing, alive in a way she hadn't been with me in years. I stared at them until my eyes burned, memorizing every angle of her betrayal. Mitch had more. Jasper wasn't just some fling. He had a reputation. Charming, predatory, a string of women he'd inspired and discarded. Clara wasn't special. She was just the latest. That should have comforted me, but it didn't. She'd chosen him over me, over us, and that cut deeper than any lie. I started planning. Not confrontation, too messy, too small. I wanted something that would unravel her world, leave her scrambling in the wreckage. I'd always been good at building, but now I'd dismantle. I dug into Jasper's life, his business, his clients, his weaknesses. He was arrogant, sloppy, living off freelance gigs and charm. Clara, too. She tied her art to him, her muse, her escape. They'd built something together, fragile as glass, and I'd shatter it. But first I watched. I waited. I let her think she'd won. Clara's birthday was coming up, her 35th, and I decided it was time to set the stage. She'd been distant, planning another retreat. But I insisted on a party. Just us and a few friends, I said, smiling like the doting husband she thought I was. She agreed, reluctantly, her eyes flickering with something. Guilt? Annoyance? I didn't care. I invited our neighbors, her old college friends, people who'd known us as a unit. I even told her to invite Jasper. That photographer you've been working with, I said casually. He seems nice. Her face froze, then softened into a laugh. Oh, he's busy, she said. I didn't push. He'd show up anyway. The party was perfect. Our backyard glowed with string lights, a playlist of her favorite songs humming through the speakers. She wore a green dress, the kind that hugged her curves, and I caught Jasper's eyes on her when he arrived. He'd come uninvited, a surprise for her, carrying a bottle of wine and that smug grin. I played my part, welcoming, oblivious, shaking his hand while imagining it breaking under mine. Guests milled around, oblivious to the tension coiling in my gut. Clara flitted between us, nervous but hiding it well, her laughter a little too loud. Mitch had done his job. I had everything, photos, emails, even recordings from a bug he'd planted in Jasper's loft. The affair wasn't just a dalliance. It was a full-blown obsession. She'd written him letters, digital, thankfully, pouring out her heart, calling him her salvation. I'd printed them, every word, and tucked them away. But the real weapon was Jasper's past. Mitch found lawsuits, harassment, unpaid debts, buried under his polished exterior. He was a house of cards, and Clara had bet everything on him. As the night wore on, I watched them. A stolen glance here, a brush of hands there. They thought they were clever, untouchable. I let them have their moment. Near midnight, I raised a glass, silencing the crowd. To Clara, I said, my voice steady. The most creative woman I know. She beamed, oblivious. I smiled back, knowing what was coming. The party ended, guests left, and Jasper lingered, offering to help clean up. I said goodnight, went upstairs and waited. Tomorrow the real work would begin. The morning after the party, I woke to the sound of Clara humming in the kitchen. She was oblivious, stirring cream into her coffee. Her green dress swapped for leggings and one of my old shirts. It was a scene I'd loved once. Her barefoot, hair mussed, the dog circling her legs. Now it felt like a mockery. Jasper had left around 2 a.m. After their cleanup, stretched into whispers I didn't bother to overhear. I'd stayed upstairs, plotting, letting them think I was asleep. Today was the first step. I'd spent weeks preparing, but the party crystallized it. Their arrogance, his swagger, her stolen glances, lit a fire I couldn't douse. I kissed her cheek as I grabbed my keys, casual as ever. Bridge inspection today, I lied. Back late. She nodded, barely looking up. Perfect. I drove to Mitch's office instead. A dingy storefront with peeling paint. He slid a USB drive across the desk. More recordings, more photos, a timeline of their every move. They're sloppy, he rasped. Cocky, too. I nodded, pocketing it. Sloppy was good. Cocky was better. Jasper's loft was my first target. Mitch had scoped it, minimal security, a landlord who didn't ask questions. I didn't need to break in. I just needed leverage. His photography business was his lifeblood, corporate clients, gallery shows, a reputation he polished like glass. But glass cracks. Mitch had dug up old emails, complaints from models, unpaid invoices, a hushed settlement with a woman who'd called him pushy. I'd use it all. I spent the day crafting a letter, anonymous but precise, hinting at exposure. Your past is catching up, I typed. Step carefully. I mailed it from a post office across town. No return address. Clara came home that night, distracted. Long day? I asked, stirring pasta on the stove. She shrugged, eyes on her phone. Just deadlines. I didn't push. I'd seen the texts Mitch intercepted. She was meeting Jasper tomorrow, some inspiration session. I smiled, serving her dinner, imagining her face when it all unraveled. She didn't suspect a thing, and that was my edge. I'd built our life with care. I'd tear hers down with precision. The letter was just the spark. The fire came next. Jasper got the letter 2 days later. Mitch tailed him, watched him rip it open outside his loft, his face tightening as he read. Good. I wanted him rattled, off balance. Clara noticed it too. She came home that night quieter, her usual chatter replaced by fidgeting. Something wrong? I asked, all concern. She shook her head. Too quick. Just tired. I let it drop, but I knew. He'd told her, probably spun some story about a jealous ex or a rival. She'd believe him, she always did. I escalated. Using a burner phone, I texted him, I know what you've been doing. So will everyone else. No name, no specifics, just enough to twist the knife. Mitch said Jasper spent the next day pacing his studio, phone in hand, barking at someone, her maybe. I watched Clara closely. She started sketching again, but the lines were frantic, nothing like her usual grace. New project? I asked, leaning over her shoulder. She flinched, closing the book. Just messing around. Lies. I saw the J necklace peeking from her collar, a taunt she didn't even hide anymore. The real blow landed that afternoon. I'd hired a freelancer online, untraceable, overseas, to hack Jasper's client list. It wasn't hard, he was careless with passwords. I sent a mass email from a spoofed address, attaching one of Mitch's photos. Jasper and Clara, tangled together in his loft, her face unmistakable. The message was simple. Your photographer has a side gig. Thought you should know. Recipients included galleries, ad agencies, even a magazine he'd bragged about. Within hours, his phone must have lit up. Cancellations, questions, chaos. I didn't see it, but I felt it, a tremor in their perfect little world. Clara came home late, pale, her eyes red. Rough day? I asked, pouring her wine. She nodded, sipping too fast. A client backed out. It's fine. It wasn't fine. I knew Jasper's panic was bleeding into her, and I savored it. She'd tethered herself to him, and now he was sinking. I'd make sure she went down too. But not yet. I needed her to feel the weight first, to squirm under it. That night, she barely touched me, curling into herself on the bed. I lay awake, smiling into the dark. The fallout hit harder than I'd expected. Jasper's career started crumbling. 2 galleries dropped him. A big shoot got canceled. Word spread fast in his circle. People love a scandal. I kept tabs through Mitch, who'd tapped a friend in the art scene. He's freaking out, Mitch said over coffee, sliding me a photo of Jasper arguing with someone outside a bar. Blames her. Thinks she blabbed. I almost laughed. Clara, the loyal muse, taking the fall for my work. Poetic. She was unraveling too. She'd stopped sketching, spent hours on the phone. Muffled calls I couldn't hear but didn't need to. The necklace vanished. Maybe she'd ditched it, maybe he had. I played dumb, kept the routine, breakfast, small talk, kisses she barely returned. You seem stressed, I said one morning, buttering toast. Anything I can do? She forced a smile. Just work stuff. I nodded, hiding my grin. Work stuff. Sure. I upped the ante. Jasper's landlord got a tip, anonymous, of course, about suspicious activity in the loft. A quick search turned up nothing illegal, but it spooked him enough to threaten eviction. Meanwhile, I leaked more photos to a local art blog, captioned with vague accusations. Photographer's muse or manipulator? Clara's face wasn't clear, but anyone who knew her would guess. She'd always craved recognition. Now she'd get it, twisted and ugly. I watched her scroll her phone that night, her breath hitching as she saw it. Everything okay? I asked, all innocence. She slammed it down. Fine. The best part? They couldn't trace it. I covered my tracks, burners, proxies, Mitch's discretion. They'd suspect each other, outsiders, anyone but me. I saw it in her, doubt creeping in, the shine fading from her secret life. She'd picked Jasper over me, built him up in her head, and now he was a liability. I wasn't done. The next move would hit closer, cut deeper. I wanted her to feel what I'd felt, betrayed, exposed, alone. And I'd do it without ever raising my voice. Clara cracked first. She came home one evening, coat drenched from rain, and collapsed on the couch, sobbing. I'd never seen her like that, raw, unpolished, her mask gone. What's wrong? I asked, kneeling beside her, playing the part. She shook her head, tears streaking her face. Everything's falling apart, she whispered. My work, my everything. I handed her a tissue, hiding the thrill in my chest. Tell me, I said softly. She didn't. She just cried harder, and I let her, knowing Jasper's ruin was clawing at her too. He was a mess. Mitch said he'd lost another client, was drinking heavily, snapping at anyone who'd listen. The blog post had spread. People whispered about the photographer and his muse, and Clara's name started surfacing. Her freelance gigs dried up. Clients don't like drama. I'd nudged that along, tipping off a few of her contacts with vague warnings about unreliability. She didn't suspect me. She couldn't. I was still Daniel, the steady husband, the rock she'd forgotten she'd leaned on. I planted the next seed. She'd left her laptop open, a rare slip, and I slipped in a file, screenshots of her letters to Jasper, the ones where she'd called him her salvation. I didn't send them, just left them there, labeled memories. She'd find them eventually, wonder how they got there, who knew. Paranoia was my weapon now. That night, she barely ate, staring at her plate like it might bite. You sure you're okay? I asked. She nodded, but her hands shook. I saw it, the fear, the guilt. She was drowning, and I'd barely started. Jasper called her late, his voice loud enough to leak through the phone. I caught fragments, accusations, desperation. She hung up, pale, and went to bed without a word. I followed, lying beside her, feeling the distance widen. She'd chosen him, built a fantasy, and now it was ash. I'd make sure she tasted every bitter grain before I revealed my hand. The endgame was close, and it would be crueler than she could imagine. The tipping point came on a Friday. Clara's phone buzzed nonstop. Texts, calls, emails she didn't answer. She'd stopped leaving the house, claiming a break from work. But I knew better. Her world was imploding, and Jasper was the epicenter. Mitch sent me an update. Jasper had lost the loft, evicted after missing rent, and was crashing with a friend, his gear pawned off to cover debts. The art scene had turned on him, and Clara's name was tangled in the mess, a footnote in his collapse. She found the screenshots that morning. I timed it, left the laptop open while I showered, the file glaring on the screen. I heard her gasp, a sharp intake of breath, and peeked through the cracked door. She scrolled, hands trembling, her love letters to him laid bare. How? She whispered, clicking through, searching for a source. There wasn't one, just the files, a ghost in her machine. She slammed the laptop shut, pacing, muttering to herself. I stepped out, towel around my waist. Something wrong? I asked. She jumped, eyes wild. No, just a glitch. I let her stew. She didn't confront me. She couldn't, not without admitting everything. Instead, she withdrew, barely speaking, her spark gone. I kept the pressure on. Using another burner, I texted Jasper. She's the leak. Check her laptop. He'd believe it. He was desperate, paranoid, ready to turn on her. Within hours, she got a call, him yelling, her voice rising in defense. I didn't. How could you think? She hung up, threw the phone across the room, and sank to the floor. I watched from the hall, silent, satisfied. That night, I cooked her favorite, lasagna, rich and warm, and set the table like nothing had changed. She picked at it, eyes hollow. I'm sorry, she said suddenly, voice small. For what? I asked, feigning confusion. She hesitated, then shook her head. Just everything. It wasn't enough, not yet. I smiled, refilling her glass. We'll get through it, I said, knowing she wouldn't. The final blow was coming, and it'd be a masterpiece. Cruel, quiet, and all mine. Clara was a shadow now, a husk of the woman I'd married. She barely left the couch, her phone silent after Jasper's last call. I'd broken their bond, shattered it with whispers and doubt, and she didn't even know I'd held the hammer. I kept up the act, bringing her tea, asking gentle questions she dodged with mumbles. You should rest, I'd say, and she'd nod, staring at nothing. Inside, I was electric, every nerve buzzing with the endgame. She'd taken my trust, my life, and given it to him. Now I'd take everything she had left. Jasper was finished. Mitch confirmed it. His last client bailed, his name was Mud, and he'd vanished from the city, probably licking his wounds somewhere cheap and cold. I didn't care where he went. He was a tool, a means to her ruin. Clara was the prize, the one who'd looked me in the eye and lied, who'd worn that J necklace like a badge. I'd saved the worst for her, a slow bleed she couldn't staunch. The screenshots were just the start. I'd been busy. Her art, her soul, she'd called it, was my next target. She'd built a small following, a portfolio of whimsical sketches tied to her name. I'd mirrored it, created a shadow site under a pseudonym, and uploaded her work with tweaks, dark, twisted versions of her originals. Then I emailed her clients, her galleries, her friends, linking the site with a note. Her real art. See who she is. The designs were hers but not, tainted, unrecognizable, a betrayal of her own vision. I watched her open her laptop that night, saw her face crumple as the emails poured in. What is this? She whispered, clicking link after link. She didn't sleep. I heard her pacing, muttering, trying to call someone, anyone, who'd listen. No one did. Her reputation, fragile as it was, cracked under the weight of confusion and disgust. I stayed upstairs, feigning snores, letting her unravel alone. By morning, she was frantic, typing apologies, explanations no one bought. It's not me, she cried into the phone, voice breaking. I poured coffee, humming, and set a mug beside her. Rough night? I asked. She stared at me, eyes red, and for a moment, I thought she'd confess. She didn't. She just sipped, defeated. The house felt like a mausoleum, silent except for Clara's occasional sobs. She'd stopped fighting the tide. Clients gone, friends distant, her art a punchline. I'd done that piece by piece, and she still thought it was fate, not me. I kept the mask on, cooking dinners she didn't eat, asking about her day like I cared. Maybe a break from work? I suggested, all warmth. She nodded, hollow, and I knew she was close to breaking entirely. That's when I'd unveil it, the final stroke, the one she'd never recover from. I'd saved her letters to Jasper, those gushing odes to her salvation. I printed them, dozens of pages, and added my own touch. Annotations in red ink, dissecting her words like a scientist with a corpse. Liar, I wrote beside her promises of loyalty. Fool, next to her praise for him. I scanned them, turned them into a PDF, and sent it to her entire contact list. Family, colleagues, even her old professor who'd called her brilliant. The subject line, Clara's Truth. I used a ghost email, untraceable, and watched from the living room as she opened it on her phone. Her scream was primal, a sound I'd never heard from her. She dropped the device, hands clawing at her hair, and ran to me. Daniel, someone's, She couldn't finish, just pointed at the screen. I picked it up, scrolled through the file, my face a mask of shock. Who would do this? I asked, voice steady. She collapsed, sobbing, and I held her, stroking her hair while my pulse raced with triumph. Everyone she knew had seen it. Her betrayal, her shame, laid bare. Her mother called, voice icy through the speaker. Clara, what is this? She hung up before Clara could answer. I let her cry, let the weight crush her. She didn't suspect me. How could she? I was the rock, the one she'd run to. But I saw it in her eyes. The spark was gone, replaced by despair. I'd stripped her of Jasper, her art, her dignity, and now her people. She had nothing left but me, and that was the cruelest part. I'd keep her close, let her lean on me, knowing I'd orchestrated it all. She'd never escape the cage I'd built. Clara stopped functioning. She didn't shower, didn't eat unless I pressed, just sat on the couch clutching a pillow like it could save her. The letters had done their work. Her phone was silent now, no calls, no texts. Her world had shrunk to these walls, and I was its warden. I'd taken everything, but I wasn't done. The revenge had to be complete, a wound she'd carry forever. I started small, subtle, moving things she'd lost, like her wedding ring, which I'd hidden in a drawer she'd never check. "Where is it?" she'd mutter, searching, and I'd shrug. "Maybe you misplaced it." I dug deeper. She'd kept a box of old photos. Us, her family, happier times, under the bed. I took them, scanned them, and edited her out of everyone. Me smiling alone on our honeymoon. Her parents at Christmas with an empty space where she'd been. I printed them, swapped them into the frames around the house. She noticed days later, staring at a picture on the mantel. "What?" she whispered, touching the glass. "That's always been me," I said casual. "You're tired, Clara." She blinked, confused, and I saw the doubt creep in, her mind, her memory, fraying at the edges. I fed it. "You've been forgetting a lot lately," I'd say, offhand. When she couldn't find her keys or her favorite mug, she'd nod, uncertain, and I'd smile, pouring her tea laced with just enough valerian to blur her days. She slept more, moved less, her grip on reality slipping. I didn't need her to suffer loudly, just deeply, quietly, in a fog she couldn't name. She'd ask about the photos again, and I'd tilt my head. "You edited them, remember? Said you wanted a fresh start." Lies, but she'd frown, unsure, and let it go. The neighbors noticed. "Is Clara okay?" they'd ask, peering past me. "She's just resting," I'd say, and they'd nod, uneasy but distant. Her isolation was complete. No art, no Jasper, no family, just me. I'd sit beside her at night, watching her stare at the TV, unseeing. "We're fine, right?" I'd ask. She'd nod, automatic, and I'd squeeze her hand, knowing she was mine now. Not out of love, but necessity. The revenge wasn't in her pain. It was in her dependence, her erasure. Months passed, and Clara was a ghost in her own life. She'd shuffle around, hair unwashed, eyes dull, speaking in fragments. "Did I?" she'd start, then trail off, lost. I'd fill the gaps, gentle but firm, rewriting her past. "You said you didn't need art anymore," I'd tell her when she stared at her old sketchbooks, now boxed in the attic. She'd nod, accepting, too tired to question. I'd taken her identity, piece by piece, and she didn't fight. That was the beauty of it. She didn't even know she'd lost. I kept Jasper's memory alive, just enough to sting. I'd leave his name on a post-it, tucked in a drawer she'd find, or hum a song she'd dance to with him at the party. "Where'd I hear that?" she'd murmur, and I'd shrug. "Maybe a dream." Her confusion was my trophy, a quiet victory no one else could see. I didn't need her to scream or beg, just to crumble, slow and sure, under my roof. The necklace resurfaced one day, dangling from the dog's collar. "Look what he found," I said, laughing. She froze, then took it, hands shaking, and hid it away. I let her keep that secret. It didn't matter anymore. I started rumors, subtle ones. To the neighbors, "She's been fragile since," well, you know. To her old friends, through a fake account, "Clara's changed, hasn't she?" People pulled back, pitying or judging, and she didn't notice. I'd bring her mail, bills, junk, nothing personal, and she'd stare at it, unopened. "No one writes anymore," she said once, voice flat. "Guess not," I replied, hiding the letters I'd intercepted, burning them in the backyard. Her world was me, and I shaped it, a sculptor with a broken muse. The final touch was the house. I repainted, rearranged, erased every trace of her taste. Her bright curtains, her quirky lamps, replacing them with stark, neutral tones. "Looks better, right?" I'd ask. She'd agree, listless, not caring it wasn't hers anymore. I'd won. Not with fists or shouts, but with patience, with control. She lived because I allowed it, breathed because I hadn't taken that too. And she'd never know why. A year after the party, Clara was unrecognizable. She sat by the window most days, watching rain streak the glass, her hands idle. I'd built a life around her ruin, work, hobbies, a calm I hadn't felt in years. And she was its centerpiece, a silent monument to my revenge. She didn't ask about Jasper, her art, her past. Those doors were locked and I'd swallowed the keys. "You're happy, aren't you?" I'd say, and she'd nod, a reflex, her eyes empty. I didn't need her love, just her presence, a reminder of what I'd done. I showed her mercy in my way. I didn't abandon her, didn't cast her out. I fed her, clothed her, kept her safe in the prison I'd made. The neighbors stopped asking. Her family assumed she'd chosen this fate. I'd send them updates, photos of us, me smiling, her vacant, captioned "doing well." They didn't reply. She was mine to tend, a garden I'd let wither but never uproot. The cruelty was in the quiet, the slow erasure of Clara. The artist, the wife, the woman who dared to choose him. One night she spoke, a rare flicker. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked, voice small, staring at the repainted walls. I paused, fork halfway to my mouth, and met her gaze. "No," I said, soft as velvet. "You're just you." She blinked, accepting, and went back to her plate. I didn't tell her the truth. How her betrayal had fueled this. How I'd dismantled her life with the precision of a blueprint. She didn't need to know. The not knowing was punishment enough. I'd won. Not with violence or confrontation, but with something colder, control, patience, a revenge so complete it left no blood, just silence. She'd live with me in my shadow until time took her naturally, and I'd carry on, the engineer who'd built a bridge to nowhere, just for her to cross. The dog slept at her feet, the house hummed with quiet, and I watched her fade, satisfied. She'd never betray me again. She couldn't. I'd made sure of that.